Hey there, welcome back to the All Shift Podcast. Today's guest is Mignon Francious. Now, Mignon has a book. She's an author, which is awesome, and it's a book called Made from Scratch, Finding Success Without a Recipe. Now, the interesting thing is she has a cool story. I mean, she tells this amazing story about how she started her life out in this really difficult way. Essentially, she had to find a way to fend for her kids and make money, and what she could do was make cupcakes. And there's a story you're going to hear in this episode she unpacks about really the journey to going through the complete bottoms, being broke and not having much, to now having this amazing book, being one of the foremost recipe creators of cupcakes in the world, and making cupcakes. She sent me some. They were delicious. My family loved them. And so today we unpack the episode, not just from a stance of really just the idea of cupcakes, which is cool in the book, but really her journey and how you can take the lessons that she learned and apply them to your life to find success without a recipe. Because we all have situations in life we want to find success, but the path isn't clear. And she helps you unpack and find out exactly how to have that be clear to you. So without further ado, let's dive into the episode. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. We have someone you already know about, Mignon Francious. It's a cool name to say, I'm not going to lie. It like rolls off the tongue. It's pretty cool. It feels like a movie character. So without further ado, we're going to hop into the conversation. Mignon, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming and hanging out with us today. I'm excited to learn about what you got going on. One, I like cupcakes. That's pretty good. I'm a big fan. I had a friend one time.
And we have the best cupcakes.
Okay. All right. Let's guess. So here's the thing. My friend, she might say those are fighting words. I have no idea how to taste your
Oh,
cupcakes. She started when I didn't know cupcakes would be a thing. She's out here baking up these crazy concoctions of like peanut butter jelly and churro and stuff. I'm like, this is not what I grew up on. But then you can actually get some crazy delicious cupcakes if you've done properly. But that's we'll get,
yes, I listen. Listen, I am not a discriminator of cupcakes. So if you have a good one, I want to eat it.
I'm with that. You know, so there's what are those ones they do? So I actually went to, I think, Disney World years ago. And there's
Mhm.
one that's called, it's like a pink box. I don't know what the pink box is called. There's just a bunch of like the big mainstream cupcakes, we'll call it. And I had one and I was a
Mhm.
little bit let down from like all the hoopla for what it's going to be. I'm like, this is going to be amazing, right? And you get like, nah, okay. I could have got this at my Nugget Heinz box.
Yeah, and like the way that I approach the cupcake collection is very much like your grandmother in her kitchen, which
Mhm.
I am a grandmother, but I'm a new age grandmother.
All right.
And so these are going to be the kinds of cakes that your grandmother would have made. So,
Okay.
except for the introduction of sweet potato, which is a cupcake collection original. And if you ever meet another one, it wants to be that one.
Okay. Interesting. How do you make a cupcake out of sweet potatoes?
Yeah.
Interesting. My wife would love that.
Yeah.
She has these things where like she gets like a packet of sweet potatoes. Like they now package these things up like just sliced sweet
Uh-huh.
potato. And, like that's her candy.
Yep. I've had. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They
Sweet
call it
potatoes
magic.
have a lot of fiber in it and they have a sweetness to them.
Yeah,
So it lends itself to being a cupcake that's also good for you.
that makes sense. All right, I'm gonna tell my wife that next time she's with a whole handful of sweet potato cupcakes. What are you doing? I'm being healthy right now. All right, so I start this podcast typically with one random question, which is, let's say I'm walking around town. I sit down next to this beautiful woman. It's you. I don't know you. And you're sitting there doing your thing. And for some reason, you feel compelled to turn and start talking to me. In your personal opinion, why should I listen to you?
Oh, I have such a hard time about bragging about myself, but I probably just say, "Hi, I'm Mignon Francois, and I just wrote a book called Made from Scratch Finding Success Without a Recipe." And I think you should listen to me because everybody has a story. And I believe everyone should write that story down. My story is that God was waking me up at 3:17 every morning, wanting to invite me into a relationship. And it was there that he told me to follow these specific instructions. And I got all of the details I needed to open up the cupcake collection. Problem is, I couldn't bake, not even out of a box when I started.
Really? Interesting. How long ago was this? As you said, it's like when was this? I'll ask.
That was 17 years ago.
Okay, that makes sense. I guess you couldn't. I mean, there's things I did 17 years ago that I can do now that I couldn't do back then. So you had this
Oh
moment in
yeah,
time, couldn't even do it.
it was
What was
every
interesting to
day
learn?
working like a job before
Yeah,
the business ever even opened. But I was creating recipes and going around the neighborhood saying, "Will you try this for me? Tell me what you think." My family says it's good, but they love me, so I want to see what you think about it.
yeah.
And they would try them and then come back and knock on my door and say, "Where can I pay for that?"
Really? That's good. That's like the mark of something that people desire. So what? You've heard of the book The E Myth before?
Yes.
Have you read this book? Because this is like perfect situation because it's about a baker.
I
It's like,
haven't read it yet, but it's on my list of reads for this year.
oh, it's a good book. I'll give everybody the Cliff Notes version of it. It's about a woman, and I'm gonna see maybe this is part of it. A woman who goes, someone she's a baker. People go, "You're an amazing baker. I would love to see you open your shop." She says, "I don't know. I love bacon." And they eventually talk her into it. She gets into it and she hates it because she's doing all these different jobs. She doesn't get to do what she used to love to do, which was just simply bake. So she finds herself
Mhm,
bogged down in the nuance of how do I open this thing and run this, what are the systems of this, how I deliver this. And eventually it gets to the point she realizes like she does one of three jobs. Either you're the idea person, which is the visionary, you're the systems that makes it all work, or you're the technician that does the thing. She was visionary
mhm,
technician, hated the systems. And so because of that, it was a whole book breaking down how business must have all these three. So the
mhm.
email, you're welcome. You should still go read it though.
Yeah.
But, uh, so how did this? So someone comes, knocks on the door, and goes, "Hey, this is an amazing cupcake. I want to pay you money for more of these," which I makes sense. I would do the same thing. How does it progress towards the level of eventually becoming a business?
Oh, yeah. So there were so many people in my neighborhood who were doing exactly that. But it
Uh,
was one particular neighbor who knocked on my door and she had a really big order for me. I
mm,
was sitting in my house without electricity. I was running my house on a generator at the time because electricity wasn't something that we had on a regular basis. And I was walking to the store on the corner from my house to buy water, bottled water for the bathtub to give my children baths in.
well,
When she knocked on my door and said, "Hey, I want to hire you to make cupcakes for all of my clients for the season."
mhm,
Problem is, I was doing the Dave Ramsey baby step plan in the back of my house where you stuff money into envelopes and you sort of do this snowball system where you pay off the smallest thing first and then everything sort of you attack your bills from the smallest to the largest. But I didn't have any money to pay for anything, keep the lights on, let alone by this time when she was knocking, set aside anything for dinner for the whole entire week when I realized all I had was $5 left. So
mhm,
I go into the door and she offers me this opportunity. And she sees the perplexity in my face and says, "Hey, when you give me some, I'll pay you some." And so I took the deal, closed the door, and went and had a come to Jesus moment with God, saying, "God, why would you give me this opportunity when I don't have any electricity or any money to really take this?" And God said to me, "But I feed birds who don't look like me. How much more? They don't store up in barns, they don't toil, but how much more will I do for you who looks like me?" So I decided to test it and see if it was real. I put on my shoes, I walked around the corner, and I bought everything that I could buy with the $5 that I had. And like she said she would, she paid me. And so
mhm,
I turned that five into 60 that day. And I turned that into 600 by the end of the week. And
mhm.
I've been flipping that same money for the last 17 years
I
to the
like.
tune of being named as the best bakery in Tennessee, the
Mm,
best bakery in Louisiana. We
mm,
have no debt. We own the property that we were losing when we started this whole thing. And it was all about field trip money and electricity. And
mm.
now we're able to help other students graduate and also make a living.
I love it. I didn't know all this. This is why I love these podcasts because you get to find out these stories that are tucked away that no one thinks about or hears about. And people always go, can you read up and hear all the stuff? But I want you to know everything about my person. And I go, I do want everything about your person, but not just the stuff that's written. I want to hear the heart and the soul of it because I
Uh-huh.
can actually have a real conversation with you. Because my head goes to that moment. Like I
Mhm.
grew up poor. We had, situation. I was actually given away into foster care. So I had a situation where I grew up in an all white, very poor family, and we were like that. We didn't have much. The idea of
Mhm.
like having like some McDonald's or something was like typically the normal for us because like 99 cents back then, like 60 cents for a hamburger. That was it. It wasn't anything good.
Yeah.
And I definitely remember one time camping for a month. And as a kid, you're like, we're camping for a month. Like we had nowhere to live for a month. We decided to go
Mm.
camping. And so I get that.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is in those moments, most people don't have the mentality of, I can get out of this. And if they're given the opportunity,
Mhm.
they don't even take it like you did. So I love that you did. As you're going through this and you're building up, my deeper question, I guess, is like, was there any parts of you that goes like, this is just a fluke, this just can't last, or should I lean in? Because sometimes we have this connection to where I start coming out of a place and I'm so
Mhm.
used to the place I was at that I almost feel like compelled to pull back. Did you ever have that battle?
Oh, yeah. I think for me, though, I believed I was always going to be famous. I just didn't know what for.
Mm,
And then too, I wasn't really looking for anything major to happen out of this. I really was just looking for field trip money. I
yeah.
mean, I wanted to help make the ends meet. At the time I was married, and I wanted to help my husband who I had seen walk onto the porch. He very, very, very fair skinned, and he looked gray like death to me. Little did I know he was dying, but not to the flesh, not physically. He was dying to me, and he was going to ask me for a divorce after 21 years. So
Mm,
I was praying and asking God to give me something I could do to help him, and God was giving me something that I was going to need to do to help me.
interesting. Maybe doing that was better for both of you. You never know. Life is sometimes situations they occur at the
Definitely agree
exact
with
time.
that statement.
Yeah, yeah, that is the life that we all live. So you've gone through this journey, you're building up, and obviously you're voted the best in Tennessee and Louisiana. Where was like I guess, where'd you cross the chasm into like the greater level? Because there's got to be some point in time where you're doing your thing, you're just regular, with field trip money, take care of simple stuff. And then eventually the idea had to pop up of go, all right, this is time to go bigger. This is time to reach more people in order to get voted like to put yourself out there. What did it feel like taking a step into the broader stance of the world and like, I will say, competing with other businesses as well?
I think a lot of people think that, so now after all these years, I've been able to establish myself as a business leader in the community and someone that people follow for what they call my grassroots follow your spirit efforts, right? But in the midst of what I was going through, I was just doing what I knew to do. I had gone to college to be a doctor. I was a pre-med student in college, but I couldn't apply the science to the human body. And so it was 17 years later in my kitchen that I began to understand what they were trying to teach me when I began to be able to make these mixes. And so I just was going along, just minding my business. And a lot of times you don't know that you're building something great. You're just showing up every day. And it was other people who were coming over and spending time and sitting in the bakery with me and saying, other people need to try this.
Mm,
This is really good, Mignon. And then we started winning awards, we started competing and things like that. It just began to be something where we were always selling out and we needed to be in the places where people were. And when we looked up one day, I was turning 40 and I was winning a major award here in the city called the 40 under 40. So this is my 30, the year I turned 39.
yeah,
And that's when everything changed. When I got that award from the Nashville Business Journal, it was really like, oh, she's really not playing about business. And the thing about me in business was when I was a little girl and all the other little girls wanted to play with Barbie dolls, I didn't like to play with dolls. I actually liked to play business and
mm,
I wanted to be in charge. So this was pretty much like playing a game for me. I was doing the thing that I really loved to do, and that was count cash and make a product that people wanted to have. I
yeah.
think it was when someone else said, "Oh, you're good enough," that I started to wake up and pay attention.
Interesting. You sound like a wife. First off, my wife was built that way. She was a kid who had on her side of her wall. She's like, I can remember back to being like 8 or 9 years old. I had a tally for every dollar that that was to mine, like my name she owned, but also like if she borrowed money, someone borrowed money from her, she'd mark how much they owed when it was due. She'd check up like she tracked it all. So I get that. I do also
Is
get
she the money person in the
she,
family?
you know what she is. I think it's hard. It took me a while to be like, yeah, she is. I think you get to a certain point, you're like, no, I'm supposed to do that. She is the one
Yeah.
that makes sure we don't buy stupid things. We're like, return that. Not
Well,
that
that's
we,
why you need a person like that.
You do. Everybody does. To be quite honest, everybody. I grew up without having any understanding of how money works or any relationship to it. So I just was like, I got it. Let's just spend it because it's here. And then, you don't have it when you need it. For her,
Yeah.
we still get to the point where I don't, she'll make me return $5 items at a Home Depot. I'm like, it is
Mhm.
$5. It is not that
Yeah.
big a deal. She's like, no, it is. So her brain works this way. And I don't get it, but I 100% get it at the exact same time. So yes, she is the
I
one that,
love that you celebrate it too, because that's really what got us into the position where we were in.
mm,
I was given my first credit card when I was 15 years old, and I
okay.
was punished from my credit card when I was 15 years old. My mother had gotten a hold to the bill in the mail and saw how much I had purchased and that I couldn't pay the bill all off at once. So she said, bring me the credit card and everything that's listed on this card. You can have it and give me your paycheck. And
Mm,
so I learned from, the hard way how to save my money and how to live within my means and how not to buy things I didn't need and to save for the things that I really did want. And I think how we got into the situation was my ex-husband was a lot like you in that
mm,
he didn't know how this stuff worked. He knew how to make the money, he didn't really know how to steward over it. And no one had ever sat down with him and taken the time to do that, where someone had done that with me. And I think
right.
that's what makes couples good for one another when they're totally opposite, but that
Yeah.
they celebrate the strengths in the other one. So I think that's a cool thing
I
that
would
you
fully agree.
recognize.
And I'm not as stupid as I used to be. I'm better with money, 100% way that I used to. But she's a little bit more to the edge of like, I'm like, calm it down. Like we can afford that. We are 100% more than capable of afford $5. But she's the Filipino in her. She's just never going to get rid of it. So it works. So do you
Yes.
part of that help with the business? Because a lot of people, they struggle in business for a lot of years. I did my first business for a while before I sold it. But there is that lack of
Mhm.
understanding the stewarding of money. But my wife, she's had the same business. She's just escalated at multiple levels where it's a multi-million-dollar business in a really
Mhm.
simple area. But I look at her and I go like, man, she has so much awesome success, but it's almost like it's boring. And I don't say it in a negative way. My world and
Uh-huh.
what I do, I'm talking to you. I literally was yesterday afternoon. I was in Las Vegas, gave a speech in Las Vegas, got in a flight, came home. I'm here now. We're talking. I want a flight tonight at 5:30 to San Diego for a speech. I come back tomorrow. This
Me
is
too.
yeah, it's nonstop flow. And so there is this nuance and dance to it. Do you find that the stewarding of money helped you? Because I find that if you don't have a lock on these things, your business, no matter how good you are, can be done quickly.
Yes. I One of the things I did in finding my success was to look to the habits of other successful people,
Mhm,
but not just successful people, wildly successful people.
mhm.
And I found myself again having another come to Jesus moment with God, where God, like, why I heard this rap song and it said, they ain't see me because I pulled up in my other bins. Last week, I was in my other bins, and it's a song called Otis by Kanye and Jay Z.
Yep, I know.
And one of the things that I was like, God, they have options and they're luxurious. Do you love them more than me? And I heard God say, do you want to put in what they put in to get what they put out? Which meant that work was required of me.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
not only do I think stewarding over the money, but I think that work is required of you. And then also when you look at these very regimented people, their backgrounds are a lot like yours and mine. They've come from some really hard backgrounds, some really hard struggle, but you never hear them say, man, I wish that that never happened to me.
yeah.
Because of those things, they are who they are and they're able to become who they become. And I believe that those things are here to serve me. And so I looked to what they were doing. And one of the things was never complaining about where they came from, but they were also very regimented in everything that they were doing. And I talk a lot about that in the book about how I found success looking at the success of other people.
Mm. It's pretty smart. I think a lot of individuals
Yeah.
I find they look at successful people and they do one of two things. You did the thing that's the most ideal actually for success. I find that sometimes people
Mhm.
get to the point of pointing out we'll call it the discrepancies in somebody's path or their process. And it's usually in a way of
Mhm.
envy or like some kind of like I'm somewhat, I'll call it jealous. And so as opposed to praising and going, hey, I got something I can learn. Some people go like, oh, that's just Mignon. She's just from around the corner. You know what she used to just be doing? She only had $5 for her name. Once like they bring you back down, and you go, no, no, no.
Yeah.
if you don't understand that
Mhm,
there's a level I've gone to, you're going to miss out on all the lessons I could give to you. Did you ever find yourself
mhm.
in a process kind of floating in that space?
Of where I wanted to degrade somebody or somebody was
Oh
degrading
no,
me.
like seeing other people doing things and going like, oh, so I find myself, this is maybe me, I'm going to out myself and see if this will make sense. In the early stages of my career as a speaker and doing my thing, I would always go out and be like, man, I'm good. And I would see other people and go, man, I'm better than them. And man, they're not doing anything. Like I almost would discount their skills or their ability or where they're currently at and go, oh, they just missed this and they're not doing this. And then it took me a good couple of years to go, no, but they are at a level that I can definitely say I want to be at. So no matter whether or not I like how they got there, what they do, I gotta give them grace and some credit so I can learn something to push myself closer to them.
I definitely, okay, I understand now what you were saying. I definitely think I did that in some sort of way, but I'm always bad at praising myself or bragging on myself, but I'm very good at bragging on the experiences or the achievements of others. You will never out brag me on somebody else. But if I was going to say, oh, I could have did that, I would say I beat myself up a lot on the inside as I would watch other people doing the things that I really wanted on the inside to be able to do. And it came down to my lack of self-esteem and confidence. But when I found out the things that God had said about me in the meaning of my very name, and I saw myself for the first time as beautiful, because I thought I was ugly until I was 33 years old.
Mm.
But when it was a picture that was taken of me, I talk about this also in the book. It was a picture that was taken of me before filters and Instagram, that I couldn't deny that the girl on this image was beautiful and it was me. That
Mhm.
I then could walk in the room and have an idea and raise my hand and say, I know the answer to that. And then I didn't have to sit back. And what I would do is sulk about the fact that I had a really good answer and I didn't trust myself enough to raise my hand and say, hey, what about me? Because I thought people would look at me, say I look weird, or maybe it's the way I dress, or I didn't belong here. So it was never about tearing them down. It was always about tearing my own self down.
Yeah. I think that's a common thing a lot of people have. It's weird that our world operates like that. I think psychologically we do a lot of this. You ever heard of the Dove study?
No, what's that? I love studies, so I'm
All
interested
right.
in this.
Look up the Dove study. It's these they take these
Okay.
two, well, they take multiple pairs, women, they're friends. They take them to this location where it's like it looks like a warehouse, it appears to be, and they get a sketch artist.
Mhm,
And they have them separately come with the sketch artist. And one person goes in there and they describe themselves to the sketch artist. Then they switch
mhm,
places. A personal friend comes and describes their friend to the sketch artist. And then later on, they would come through. Now they had multiple different, friends come through, and they would always,
mhm,
to a T, have this take place. The person describing themselves would have this, blemish filled, ugly like description, and the sketch artist would have this ugly face. But their friend, in
mhm.
describing them, it was always beautiful. And so
Oh,
it shows that a
it's like
lot of
Dove,
us,
like the soap.
yeah, the soap.
Okay. I,
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
I've seen one where they say they'll line up a group of women and they'll say, put yourself between the two sizes that where you think you belong. And we always put ourselves in the wrong spot
Yeah, similar
of
stuff. I
where,
think they do that.
like, of how we think. I love some of the things that Dove has done.
They do a good job. I do. It's
Yeah.
heartfelt stuff, but I think that
Yeah.
even though it's not men, and my assumption is he put guys in the same position, we might do the same exact thing. But it simply
Hmm.
points out that we don't actually see the greatness in who we are oftentimes. And then even when we
Hmm.
are doing great things, we question it because then we're comparing sometimes other people that are greater than we are. So we almost force ourselves to stay small in a weird, comfortable way. But you blossomed out,
Yeah.
right? You expanded and created this whole cool company. At what point in time did you really
Hmm.
have that anchoring? You go, you know what? I am so confident in my skill set, how good I am, got the awards and everything, that it's time for me to write this book. When did that
Uh-huh.
become an idea or a thought?
Oh, this is such a good question. It was all of the clientele, it was the customers who were coming. It was the people who were nominating me for awards, and then the companies that were passing those awards out to me, who were saying things like, "You have got to write this down in a book."
Mm.
And for me, this was always about God. If you will make me successful, I will tell anybody who will listen about what they can do if they believe. So writing this down in a book just is allowing me to keep my promise to God and get there a lot faster. So that if you're up in the middle of the night and you can't sleep, you can open up the pages of this book and collide with me there on how I got from where I am to where I wanted to be. Where you can look at my life and say, these are situations that are similar to mine. We get calls from people in other countries in the middle of the night.
Hmm.
Women have reached out to me from India, from the UK, from Africa, saying, me too. We have a similar story. Like I was battered, I was abused, I lost everything I had, I didn't have any money. I'm trying to also figure out, I have this idea and it won't let me sleep. Those things that they would hear in my story. And so, as people have gone out and told the story, I'm just helping that story to get out faster. And then to help them as they're saying, oh, I heard the story. I want you to hear it too. And it's just a way to give them the story so that they will get it right. And so, also, not that they can be up in my business, but so they can be about their business.
I like that. It's good. I think it's always the idea to pass things on, right? That's what the beauty of humanity is. We have these experiences, we do other cool things, and be able to say, hey, this is my experience, and condense it down to what we'll call it the concentrated gold of whatever you experience to help people. Like it's why I do what I do. I take ideas and things that have happened in life, and I pack them in a podcast and weird statements and keynotes, and I go share with the world, and hopefully somebody takes it and does something good with it. So you have this.
I'm sure that, I mean, because your voice sounds like a professional radio show.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. I don't know where it came from. About 2 years ago, it seasoned into this. And so now I've never done radio. I've been told I should do voiceovers. I have not stepped into that realm yet. Most of the time I go and speak and I do podcasts, and that's kind of my flow, and I enjoy my pocket of life. But maybe I'll step out and do something crazy one day. Who knows?
You can even read books on Audible.
Yeah, I probably could. I read my book on Audible. I did do that.
Yeah.
I can get away with some of that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
One day.
I plan to read my book on Audible too.
It's not the easiest task in the world. I had to sit myself in a closet and just talk. It can be long. Like I would have to
Really?
do and like for 30, 40 minutes a chapter, and I would go like take a long break and just sit, which I don't know why it took me so long, but yeah, it's on top of all that, it does feel really good when you've completed it. So once you've done it, and it's out there. It feels like a really good accomplishment that I can share because it's very intimate. People they're like, I heard your voice for hours in my head, and it's like, yeah, that makes sense. It's actually a cool connection to you as a
Speaking of intimate, getting a book written down on paper is also a very vulnerable thing too, because
yeah.
like it took me 2 years to write my own story. And it's like, why is this so hard? This is my life. I have lived it. I know this story. But then I started realizing that everything God had given me, he gave it to me hard, right? Nothing was easy. It took me 2 years, I told you, working every day like it was already open before the store even opened. It took me 2 years to open the store in New Orleans, which taught me that you can't take your success with you. You got to create a new opportunity everywhere you go. And then with writing this story, I didn't even know where to begin to write it. But once I started writing, it really started flowing. And I was writing all these things about what was happening and what had happened in my life. And then it became, well, that's not my story to tell. That's, my dad's story to tell, my parents' story to tell, my children's story to tell. So condensing it down to the things that just were Mignon's and the things that I could give to some other single woman or single mother or some young entrepreneur who's over 30 and thinks, it's too late for me. They can find themselves in the pages of my book and find out, oh, it's not too late for me. And so those 2 years were not wasted because I'm beginning to meet people who needed me to write it down so that they know that at 39, if you just get that idea now, it's actually a good thing because studies are showing that people who start their businesses over 30 and into their early 40s have a greater rate of success in the end.
I wouldn't doubt that. I didn't know that, but I like data and number points like that. And what's funny is we recently did our trust, my wife and I, and we have two separate trusts that are also kind of connected for the kids. And interesting thing is like you start gauging like when the kids have access to it. And there's like, if I was to pass away, there's people that can be the trustees and manage it all. And I go, what's the age? He goes, 35 is the age. I go, well, can you go earlier? He goes, I don't know if you want to do that. And I go, why? He goes, well, think about you at 35. He says, usually what happens, a lot of things take place in your 20s and late 20s, early 30s. But 35, you had enough stuff from life kick your butts. You figured some things out. You're a better steward of things.
Mhm.
So that would make more sense as to why like a business started later was okay, I've got my butt kicked a couple times in life. I understand a little bit more, so I'm gonna be wiser with business. So that does make
Mhm.
more sense as to why it would take place. And I like that you do package it up
Mhm.
and share it. As you've gone through like kind of writing the book, what are some of the like what are some of the ones that were the hardest for you to write? And I ask that because I typically find the hardest thing to write is usually the hardest thing to let out. It's so personal, but somebody else can connect to that personal thing and be better.
Yeah.
So what was some hard
The
things for you?
hard the hardest thing to write was something that I've never said publicly. And I talk about the day that my life was almost taken and my children were watching.
Mm,
And when I finished writing the story, I brought it to my youngest daughter and I said, "Is this good?" And she read it and she said, "That's really a weird question, Mom. Is it good?" Hmm. It's well written, but
mhm.
you're asking me to put good on the day I watched my father almost take my mother's life. I can't call it good, but man, it was well written. And this has been really it was a struggle for me to decide to say that out loud to people, but there's somebody who is stuck where they are and they think that they're alone, and I want them to know that they are not alone and that you can still be successful and you can still win, and it's not over until you win, because I learned in the process that everything that's happening to you is actually happening for you.
Yeah. If you let it, I 100% agree. There's a lot of things that in
I
real
think
time.
the other thing that we was hard to write and also a huge victory for me was learning that my father was born on a plantation. All of my life, we thought that he was born in New Orleans in a hospital. Well, we learned that he was born on the sugarcane plantation where his parents had worked.
Wow.
And we're talking about one generation removed from enslavement. And I think that as individuals, we believe we're so far away from slavery, but in fact, when you look at it generationally, enslavement is not very far. And so, knowing that I am now making a wealth and experiencing legacy building in the same industry that my ancestors could not have free enterprise
Yeah.
in this business of sugar, I think it's a huge um, 360-degree moment where you may not know the names of my ancestors. You may not ever experience them, but you will know me and you will know my name. And through me, you'll experience the goodness of who they were and what they had to bring into the world.
Yeah. It's actual legacy, what they call it, right? It's
Yeah.
the ability to have that ongoing, enduring kind of thing. I also think there's something to it, like it becomes a different kind of like a name to your lineage, or maybe a enlightening of your lineage, we'll call it. Like I try to do things that are different. So my kids years from now, grandkids, great grandkids, be like, man, this guy Anthony Truck's grandpa, he was pretty good dude. Like did some cool things. He broke some generational curses. Like, yeah, I did do those things. And now I don't do them only for that, but I also do it knowing that there's a way that we should live our lives to be of service thing to the world. And I love that you have that meaning behind so much of it, because I do get that. There is something to that. There's a similar moment, but not the exact same. But my grandmother, when I was adopted, I had a grandmother, and I found out years into adoption like that. This is the two, like my grandma and grandpa. They came from I think they came from Alabama, and they were
Mhm.
like not really big on black people at the time, at least in their community. A lot of
Mhm.
the time, at one point when I was about to get adopted, they were telling my mom, "Don't adopt the little black kid. Like, don't do that." Well, over the years, they fell in love
Mhm.
with me. Like, just I guess who I was and how it kind of changed a lot. And when my grandma
Mhm.
passed away, like all her brothers, which are also all her sons, which are my uncles, they asked me to lead the funeral, and so like I presided over it. It was kind of an interesting, cool full circle to be like this. This woman like loves me enough from this whole situation of what went on, the racial aspect. And I'm now at her funeral reading for everything and leading this whole thing for. So it's kind of like that interesting. You look back and like things do change. There is a separation of things. And I think if you lean in with a heart, you can create something cool, which you've done. I think is a big piece of what I'm pulling from this is in
Mhm.
the face of amazing opposition, different situations like that. We'll talk about the lineage you have. Like you're still creating something amazing and cool for the world. But I do know
Yeah.
that success sometimes creates new problems. Most people don't realize this. Just because you win doesn't mean you win forever, right? I find that all you're doing is solving problems. Then once you solve a problem, you get presented with new problems. What
Yes.
problem did you potentially face, or maybe not potentially, did actually face once you started having this great success you've had?
Oh, this is such a good question because I believe that every business, like you said, solves a problem. The problem I was trying to solve was getting my family out of debt, right? And having filtered money and food on the table. In
Yeah.
the process, as you get bigger, your problems don't go away. You just get bigger problems. And I think people look at you and think, oh, you're rich and you should give me money for this and you should pay for that. And it's like, my problems are just different sized problems. But I was able to, I found myself in a position where in my divorce and things like that, I was faced with things that didn't really seem fair to me to have to cover. But, God in his infinite wisdom and grace allowed me to get through those things. So there
Yeah.
are lessons that I learned and that I take. Um, and as long as they didn't kill me, they made me better. And so what I'm finding out in the whole process is I didn't get better, I just got better.
I like that. That's a good one. It's funny. I've heard that recently from someone who sold lemonade. It's a client
Mhm.
of all things. Is a client of mine. She sells lemonade, and it's about being better, not bitter. I've never heard it until that, and this is the second time. There's something there. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Be
And
interesting.
I am such a connoisseur of lemonade and lemon cupcakes too.
Oh, I do too. I'm a lemon guy. We found this out recently. Like I don't know how you make cupcakes. My kids they bake. That's the thing they picked up.
Uh-huh.
My 13-year-old football playing son he likes to bake. And so like
Uh-huh.
he's like he has some lemons in the backyard. Homeboy like looked up this lemon cookie recipe, and sure enough, he's out there zesting lemons and doing stuff like
I love it.
delicious stuff. I'm a big fan of like lemon meringue pie. Oh, you can't get it's
Mhm.
a good lemon. Anyways, different conversation, different time. So you got this business going well. You're writing this book. In your opinion, who's this book for? Right? Because there's always going to be a person
Ooh,
that writing this book. You were thinking about this individual possibly reading it. Who's that individual?
yes. Oh my gosh. You can tell that you have a book. And when I was writing the stories, I was always thinking about the person who was going to read it and what I wanted them to experience after they finish reading it. So they come into the book one way, but they leave the other way. So I was writing it with my daughter in mind. She's a single mom and she's been through so many things, and so oftentimes we would find ourselves on the phone really late at night, and she's a really great cook. She works in the kitchen and stuff like that, and I'm like, you really can have the business that you want. You really can start it. So I started thinking of other women who were similar to her, maybe not in such the exact same place, but this book is for somebody who finds themselves in a place where they know they were never supposed to be. This was not supposed to be your life. You do not have to be stuck here. The voice on the inside of your head that's telling you you cannot is the one that is a liar. And I'm here to tell you the truth that all you have is all you need to get you from where you are to where it is that you want to be. I started this business with $5, a dorm size refrigerator, and a KitchenAid mixer because it could keep the temperature and it had all of the capacity it needed to make cupcakes in order for me to turn a profit. And
Yeah,
it's been that money that has gotten me here. And a lot of times people think, oh, she showed up on the scene overnight, but overnight success takes 10 years. I've
yeah,
been at this for a really long time before my name ever got announced to the world. And so I want people to know, or that woman to know who feels stuck and it's never going to happen for her, or has these ideas and doesn't know where to start. You just start right where you are. One of the things I was really good at was starting. I was never good at finishing a thing. And so it's for those people too who find themselves always starting over, starting something new, trying something different. It's important sometimes to know that I got to put these ideas in a parking lot. Every idea isn't for you to use for a business or for profit, and every idea isn't for you to keep. Some ideas are for you to give away. And so ideas would always come to me. And so as I'm sitting on boards and things like that, I'm finding these ideas are often for them so that they can make money at them. But the ideas that are for me are the ones that I start, and they're the ones that I see to fruition. And so those are the people who I was writing this book to.
I like it, man. That's a good, very well stated unpacking of who this book is written for. I usually don't get an answer that thorough, which tells me it's going to be a good one. Because when you know that much about somebody intimately, you're talking to that person. And it's funny when I stand on the stage, if I want to connect with the whole audience, like the entire people that are there, you look at one human being right in their eyes, and there's a connection that just hits because they go, "Oh, this person's talking to someone." So anyone that picks up a book that's written from what I'm hearing, you're going to feel like it's being said right. It's like when you go to church and the pastor's not talking to you, but he's talking to you. Everybody in church, it's like he was talking right to me. Me too. Like, yeah, he was hitting it.
And that is exactly what I am hoping will happen.
Yeah.
That the stories that I've taken, there were so many, and there's so many more that I could have chosen to use. But as we've been, promoting the book and promoting it and touring with it and telling other people about it, I'm taking opportunities where the platform allows to put other stories in there so that people feel invited to come into the story and be a part of what it is that I made from scratch. One of the things when I was deciding what this book was going to be named, scratch was such an important word to me because I was starting from scratch. I mean, zero, nothing, nada. I had no money. And it's like, I don't have scratch. But I also learned in the process that the word scratch has so many definitions. And so when you start out in a race, that line where everybody lines up to start a race is called the scratch line. And so to know that I was being made from scratch, from the beginning, from the start of the race, God had seen me. And though it felt like I had nothing, that I was counted out, somebody tried to scratch my life out, that, people were saying that I was not enough or that I didn't have what it took, or that I felt that I wasn't scratch, or that I had a handicap, which is also another definition of scratch. But scratch is also taking whatever's available and whipping something out of it and making something useful. And that's what I was able to do with my life. I was able to take the bits and pieces that were counted out, not considered to be worth much if they were their individual parts, and create something useful out of it that other people could also eat from.
I like it. I think that's going to be the conclusion of our podcast, minus two questions, but that was very well capped at the very end, I will say. It's interesting because I do find, like, you're a baker, you're an entrepreneur, but you have a thorough ability to control your words in a way that can convey a thought, it's awesome. It's a talent that I don't think a lot of people all have. Because I get people that are authors that can't talk, like they're just not very good at it. Or business owners who definitely shouldn't be writing books, right?
Well,
So you
thank
have
you for
this.
that.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'd interview a lot of people. You're like episode almost 400 now, so I've interviewed a good chunk of humans. So that comes from experience.
That's a huge compliment. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I don't throw them around willy nilly either. It's a good one. Feel good about that one. So the two questions of this. The first question is, where can I send people to get this book? All the information about you. Where's the best place people to go?
Yes, that's so good. Thank you for asking. So, Made from Scratch, Finding Success Without a Recipe is available on Amazon.com. They can also check it out on R.H. Boyd, who is my publisher. And then they can visit us at thecupcakecollection.com, where they can learn more about the Cupcake Collection and why it is so important that I tell this story to others. And then if they want to connect with me personally, they can visit me on Instagram at Mignon.Francois. And then on all the socials with the Cupcake Collection, we are at Cupcake Tweets on Twitter and the Cupcake Collection on Facebook and Instagram.
I love it. All of the places. You guys go get a list out and just go on the list, checking box of all the different things. She's probably got some old MySpace account you can get on too if you'd like. We'll figure it all out. All right, last question. You can answer however you want again. What promise did God make to the world when he created you?
Ooh, that hit me right in my gut. What promise did God make to the world when he made you? That I will take your tears and bottle them up and trade beauty for the ashes And that in exchange for your tears, I will give you joy. For those who sow in tears will reap in joy. And Mignon will be an example of that for you.
Good. That's got to be like top three responses I might have ever had. Off the cuff too, which was even crazier to watch just take place in real time. People, that doesn't happen. Well done. Well done. I had a blast talking to you. Seriously, thank you so much for coming on and hanging out with us. Those of you who are
Thank you
still
so
tuned in
much.
and hanging, enjoy this. I hope you enjoyed this time because it was
Man, I am going to take that question with me for the rest
good.
of the entire day. You have really touched me in the soul because, just knowing how far I've come from where I used to be and knowing that God had seen me and picked me specifically to do something in the world, man, that was good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank
Somebody
you,
one time,
sir.
man.
That was good.
There you go. So that's what we need it for. Sometimes a little conversation. You don't think you're going to do what they do, and then all of a sudden you get that little nugget. And so someone asked me that one time, and it's always been one that sets on my heart like daily. And so I figured, like, why not make it part of my podcast? And so it's worked
Yeah.
its way in.
Yeah.
And I even get people that are not believers to answer it. I tweak a little bit, and they do, but it's surprising because everybody settles into that moment and goes, "Wow, it's not what I want to do." Or it's like, "What was
Mhm.
I created for that I know I'm called?" So it's yes, I'm glad you felt it the way I
Yeah.
intended it to be felt.
That's so good. I think that's going to be the thing that I tell others, because I do like a little outtake on, oh my gosh, this you'll get out of this, interview. And
Yeah.
that's the thing. That's the question I'm going to pose. That was so good.
Oh, you're welcome. You're
Thank you
welcome.
for that.
Very welcome. So thank you again for hanging out. That's those of you guys who are all here right now. Thank you for being here, hanging out, tuning in, listening to this podcast. If something resonated with you, make sure you go and apply it to life. Make sure you also go and grab this book. Pop into all the links and crazy. You'll see them in the show notes. If there's someone in your life that also needs to hear this, do them and maybe you a favor and share the episode. Sometimes our words can't reach them the way that Mignon's can and mine can. So share it. You never know what can take place. Outside of that, as always, make the most of your awe shift moments so you can make shift happen. It's Anthony Trucks and Mignon Francois signing off. Hey, thank you for tuning into the Awe Shift podcast. I pray that we gave something amazing to your life. And if you found this episode served you in some way, I would love you could share it with people you know, people you love, as well as your community, because you never know who needs that simple little seed that can grow into something amazing for their life. And the actual training doesn't stop here. If you want your free copy of the show notes sent to you after every episode so you can get the major points consolidated down, simply go to textanthony.com and message the word notes. Till next time, make shift happen.